What's up, everybody? It is Kellen here from Start Your Systems, and welcome back to another edition of Track Walk in MX Simulator, where today we're going to be playing the Carson Mumford Nate Abbott compound, made by Ezra73MX, Ezra Lewis on the forums. And this track is in the high desert of California, so before you guys go crazy on me and say, holy smokes, this actually looks horrible, it is because the high desert looks horrible. But honestly, they didn't do the best job at actually making a really, really solid environment for this track. So I can see you guys saying it's not the best looking track ever. I agree. But it is in the high desert of California, like I said, which is just kind of like northeast of Los Angeles, directly north of Los Angeles County and San Bernardino County. So like basically Glen Helen is about 20 to 30 minutes away from where this compound is now. And it is owned by the Mumford family. It's often called Mumfyland sometimes. And I guess Nate Abbott has a tie-in somehow to it. I don't really know the logistics of it. But I do know that it's been a little bit of a hotbed for people to ride and test at this off-season. It's a private place, so it's not like anybody and their mother can go. But the pros do come out in full force to go up there sometimes and test and ride this track, which is kind of cool that they let them up there, because sometimes you have these pro guys that are a little bit, jaded and trying to keep the tracks to themselves, but they opened it up and they had, Jay Sanderson, Dean Wilson, Adam Cianciarulo, lots of guys go up there and test and ride this track and still up there and testing and riding this track. So that's really cool. And it's a cool facility. If you've never, ever heard about the history before, it used to be owned by the Alessis. It is up there in the high desert between kind of like Hesperia and Apple Valley, and the Alessis are from Apple Valley, California. So it's, kind of got that history to it to a degree where like it's steeped, I should say. Not deeped, but steeped in motocross history and lore, because it's where the Alessi compound was. It's where Mike Alessi trained and, tried to get good at Supercross and never really quite got good at whoops, but did his best. But then the Mumfords came in and took it over, and I think they bought this land, if I remember right, while Carson was still a Geico Honda amateur rider, so rode for the Amsoil Honda team. And then obviously Geico went away, and Mumford jumped ship over to Suzuki and now rides for Bar X and stuff like that, but he still owns the facility, still trains and rides here, as do many other pros, as I already mentioned. So this track build by Ezra73MX, very, very steep jumps, kind of unforgiving in that regard, where if you come up short on something, you're going to go down pretty quickly, almost instant legs off in a lot of regards. But, little pop off right there. The flow of it is actually very nice. I think its transitions between the jumps are really, really well put together, because it makes it so that, you kind of can carry that momentum from jump to jump. You can maybe have the big hucks here and there. But what he sacrifices for that is because his transitions are so good, it seems like he's had to overscale some things, like the jumps in some of these rhythm lanes are massive. Some things are really peaky to keep you from doing those massive lines. Like I bet I could probably 4 right here. Yep, but we're going to go over the bars. Oh, landed it. Now we're going to go down right there. So you can still do some pretty big unrealistic lines just based on the fact that this is a video game and you can send stuff that most people wouldn't. But he tried to stifle that by making everything a little bit bigger, a little bit more overscaled. And I don't think it's really a bad stylistic choice in that regard. I think it still works pretty well. It makes it technical and challenging to try to hit the back sides of these really steep jumps and carry momentum through the sections and all those things. So I like it. I think it's a fun Supercross track. It's technical, but not overly so that you feel like you're really struggling to hit the lines. I think a beginner could still have a good time picking up this track and, flowing from corner to corner. This is actually probably a good test for popping triples into rhythm sections, because of the peakiness of the jumps and the traction that he has on this track makes it so that like the flow from section to section also works really well, and you can carry that speed in and out of the corners to pop a big line into a rhythm section, for example. Like even here, I think you could go 4 in and then 4 over the table, and maybe 5, 1 into the corner. So like stuff like that, like it's pretty easy to carry that momentum, hit those big boy lines, and feel good about yourself. Like sometimes we all need a little bit of a win in life, and even if you're just picking up the game and learning it and feel like all the pros have you completely roasted when it comes into tripling into a Supercross rhythm section, well, you can hit up the old Mumfyland compound and pop a triple in, no problemo. So this is the Supercross track. We're going to finish up one more lap here on this track, showing it off. Really fun little technical challenge. And then we're going to go check out the motocross track because this compound is big enough that he does have a motocross track on it. I believe, and this was not included on this version of the compound, but I believe Mumford also has a really, really unique whoops-only track on this facility somewhere. I don't know where. I don't know if it's behind the shed that is next to this track or what have you. But it's literally whoops only. Like, it's 4 lanes of whoops split up by 180 bull corners and a sweeper. And that's a really cool concept to me as well, because I've always thought that privateers or even factory level guys that you can tell that their weakness is the whoops is something that I wish they would, build a whoops only track or like 2 whoops back to back and just hit them on repeat so they can get good at whoops and kill their weakness. And it seems like that's something that Mumford himself is actively trying to help himself out with a little bit there by building a whoops only Supercross track, even though his arms would be probably toast after 3 or 4 laps, but got to get better at it somehow, and that's a very cool way to do it. But like I said, it's not actually on this track that Ezra put together. He does have the national track on it, though, which this track is certainly there. And as with anything in the high desert, it's flat and jumpy, but that's okay because there's a lot of compounds these days that are like that and kind of use some built-up terrain like this to make a little anthill corner that you have to get over and time the backside of that rut just right. Lots of rollers. Usually not tables, like that's a pretty rare looking tabletop right there. But yeah, I just saw some whoops on the inside of the track right there that I had not seen before. So I'm going to go see what this is all about. Is this supposed to mimic the whoops track a little bit right here? We have small whoops into a U-turn and then big whoops. I guess it's supposed to kind of mimic it, but I don't think that he actually has that on his facility somewhere. Anyway, back to the national track. I really actually quite enjoy the flow of this track, the way that Ezra chose to build it. I don't know if like everything is 100% accurate, but like there's some really cool features that I've personally enjoyed with the way that the track flows. The ruts coming in and out of the corners seem to make the most sense to me with the way that he set them up. Maybe it's just my riding style that flows well with these ruts or what have you, but I like it. He's got these huge jumps right here, big back-to-back doubles. You can go left side split to do the small step up, or you can try to time this big peaky double right here, which we're going to come up a little bit short on. Kind of reminds me, there's I think it was a Krusty Demons of Dirt video, for any of you super OGs out there, where Mike Sinkmars at Racetown 395, at that time I think it might have been called Sunrise Raceway, hit these 2 huge doubles at this track. I don't know why they built them that way or who was on the dozer building that track, but Sink went and tried to send both of them. I think he got both of them first try. Like Kerry Hart was there, a couple other people were there. No one was wanting to do them. Sinkmars did it first try. Second try, I think it was, faced the crap or went really long out of the second one and got pretty messed up. And rest in peace, Mike Sinkmars. He didn't die on that jump, but he did pass away a few years ago. He was a big senda, and that double section on Mumford's compound kind of reminds me of that, because it's just like do or die doubles. Like you have to hit them perfectly or you're going to go down, and kind of a unique challenge to get right, similar to some of the stuff on the Supercross track as I talked about, where you don't get it right, you're either going to case it and go down, or you're going to go long and go down, because you're jumping from a really high height to flat, or a really high height to the face of another jump, which is a really easy way to crash and hit the deck. So, talking about the flow of this MX track again, the way the rollers work, the way that he's kind of laid the ruts in, it all just feels kind of right to me. Did go over that anthill correctly, but when you get stopped for that inside rut, kind of flow to the inside, it hooks up really nicely. At first, when I played this track, I thought that the roll resistance was a little bit too toned back, like he could have done a little bit better with having a little bit more roll resistance and friction to keep the the pace, I guess, down a little bit from going so fast. But now that I've played the national track, I feel like it's almost perfect, because you just get cooking down some of these straightaways and it feels like you can really carry a lot of that speed. I mean, look at almost like tripling out there, popping into transition right here. You can triple into this corner, but there's still plenty of time to get down here and get stopped for these inside lines like that, for example. It's just a really nicely put together flowing track. And even though aesthetically, like I said, it may not be the most pleasing looking thing out there, I still feel like it captures probably the most realistic side of the high desert, which is just barren, not a lot of shrubbery or bushes out there, especially at this compound in particular, because they've kind of bulldozed a lot of the stuff around to make room for these jumps. There's not a lot of shrubs. There's not a lot of stuff up here. It's really wide open space, that's for sure. It's called the desert for a reason. And the reason why, I don't know if I've ever explained this, the reason why it's called the high desert and not just the desert is because in Southern California, like the desert is like Ocotillo Wells, Borrego Springs, Glamis, all those places, Gordon's Well, stuff like that, which is in the low-lying areas west or east, I should say, of San Diego. And that's, you know, like kind of where the Baja Peninsula comes up, and you have the water between the Baja Peninsula and the mainland coast of Mexico. It kind of created this flatland area in the valley, which now the Salton Sea sits in, and that's like the true desert. Like that's the big, wide open desert that exists in Southern California. The high desert is where it is because I think it's at an elevation of like a few thousand feet, like 25 to 3,000 feet in elevation, but it's still a very, very big flat land because it's actually sitting on the plates of the San Andreas Fault. And so if you ever look at a map of California in terms of the like geography of the mountains and stuff like that, the mountains kind of come down the coastline and then make like a little inland turn and create the I think it's called the San Fernando Mountain Range, which sits above Los Angeles. And behind the San Fernando Mountain Range is the high desert. And the San Fernando Mountain Range has been pushed together based on the San Andreas Fault, which is what the high desert sits on. So it got pushed up over the years based on its fault line and the way that the tectonics have worked underneath it. But it sits at a higher elevation. It's still dry and barren and gets hot as hell, but it's higher up than the low-lying desert, which is why we call it the high desert. So giving you guys a little bit of a backstory about Southern California geography while we play the Mumford compound today, because why not? Why not talk about something that doesn't have anything to do with an MX simulated video game? So that's going to do it for us here on another edition of Track Walk, riding the Mumford Abbott compound in MX Simulator by Ezra73MX. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. As always, be sure to download the track in the description below and leave a like, comment, subscribe, all those normal things as well if you guys haven't already. The grind to 100,000 subs on YouTube continues. We're getting closer and closer by the day. And of course, we appreciate all the support for everybody that is tuned in all these years along the way. So thanks guys for watching another video here on the channel, and we hope to see you guys in the next one. So long for now.